Cool. What's up, people? How you doing? Good to see you. We're excited you're here for the Boondocking trip course. We called it a challenge last time, so I may call it a challenge. Just bear with me. The challenge isn't really what it is, so we decided to rename it. Yeah, so hopefully you got your email this morning and you were able to do your homework. Today's homework is really easy. I'm just telling you, enjoy it today because you're going to have more work tomorrow. So yeah, what should we do? How should we start this?
We should just dive right in.
Dive right in?
People are busy.
Yeah. Well, real fast though.
Okay.
Real fast. Let's talk about why we like to boondock.
So many reasons.
Just to remind people why we're here, because
the views.
The views, yeah.
Less people.
Yeah.
Our kids can run wild and free.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We don't get yelled at by old people that don't like kids.
Yes, that happens too.
What else?
Well, another reason.
We're
what?
cheap. We're really cheap.
Oh,
so
we're
we don't
cheap.
Like paying for it.
But one reason we're doing this is because we have boondocked a lot, and we've seen a lot of comments in other Facebook groups or online, or people send us emails or messages all the time, and they say stuff like, "It seems like you post such beautiful pictures of your RV in beautiful places, and I wonder how you found them." Or they say stuff like, "Tell me about boondocking. How do you know where it's allowed?" Or, "I have to confess, having a little anxiety since you can't make reservations in boondocking spots." So we're going to attempt to help you with your anxiety and tell you how to get those beautiful pictures of your beautiful RV in beautiful places. And just kind of, I don't know, sometimes it's overwhelming. There's so many pieces to it. And so we're going to at least help you with one piece this week and teach you how to actually find the spots and then plan to be able to take a trip out there, because it's more than just finding a spot, because you don't really know what you're going to get until you get there. So
it's true.
Very true. Now, to recap real fast, the way this is going to work, if you didn't already know, is that you'll get an email each morning with a little bit of homework. Well, a little bit of homework, sometimes more than a little bit. And then when you get that email, you should jump over to Facebook, and hopefully you'll see the pinned post at the top of the Facebook page there, and it should be tied to the event, this live event, and it should that should be where you can leave a comment and post your homework. And you can also use this to leave a comment asking a question, because today we don't have a ton to talk about, but in subsequent days we'll have a little bit more. But then when we get done, we're going to spend some time just answering your questions about really anything you want to ask about. So that's the plan, anyway. Why are you laughing at me?
I can't talk very good.
We're coming up. We've all got coughs and sneezes and snot everywhere. So
bear with us.
Bear with us. Yes.
All right.
Is that it? So that's how it'll work each day. You'll get an email in the morning. You'll have time to do your homework, and then later in the afternoon, we'll be on here doing these calls, and we'll talk about your homework and answer questions.
So many questions.
That's it. So,
all right.
So let's talk about today.
Go ahead. I'm trying to deal with comments.
You're dealing with comments? Okay. She's the commenter. So today was really easy, right? All you had to do was pick an area. And the reason that we're going to do this is because this process that we're going to take you through is going to be specifically for the area that you picked, right? So if you picked, what were a few of the ones we saw? Glacier National Park,
Yellowstone,
Monument
Valley,
Arches. Somebody said Smoky Mountains, where we're from in Tennessee. So if you just need to pick that area, and then we're going to spend the rest of the week researching spots around that area to find you, the best place to go. And that's really it for today. I mean, the only thing you may want to consider is that if you're not familiar with boondocking, you will find out pretty quickly that there's a lot more boondocking on the west side of the country than the east side of the country.
It's true.
There's just more open land. There's more public land out west. There's just less space out east. Everything's way more cramped. All the land is privately owned. And so, if you pick a place like somewhere in Florida, you're going to have a really hard time finding a boondocking spot. I'm just going to tell you right now. But yeah, it's
with the amount of people there that are also trying to
camp
for free. It's next to impossible.
Yeah.
And in most places out east.
So if you get into tomorrow and you are having trouble finding boondocking spots after we tell you different ways to find those tomorrow, if you're having trouble finding those spots, you may want to pick somewhere else just for this course, just so you can go through the whole process with us. But just keep in mind, if you're trying to do a bunch of stuff out east, you may have issues there just because there's no spots.
Or very few.
Or very few, yeah. All right, so what do we want to do? Look at some comments or
ask some questions?
Ask some questions. If you guys have questions, go ahead and type them in the comment box. What we could do as well is we could go back and look at a few of the places that people actually want to boondock and kind of just jump through some of the areas.
Monument Valley is right here.
We wanted to go to Monument Valley, but
there was no signal,
and we had to go around like
and it was cold when we were there.
Yeah, there's boondocking over there, right?
Yeah.
The Tetons, Yellowstone, Arches, Rocky Mountain National Park. There should be stuff around there.
Definitely a lot of Grand Tetons.
Mm-hmm. We had probably one of the prettiest spots at the Grand Tetons.
Yeah.
At least in pictures. I don't know about in real life. It wasn't that awesome in real life, but it took some really good pictures.
Great Smoky Mountains.
Yep.
I don't know if there's a lot of boondocking there. We have not.
Smoky Mountain. I remember somebody telling us about one spot there, but that's all that I've heard.
We haven't looked yet because we haven't attempted it.
Yeah. Because we kind of headed out west and liked it a lot, and we haven't gone back a whole lot.
That's all I'm seeing. It's not going any further.
So if you go back to here.
I didn't see any questions.
If you go to there's a bunch of comments in.
All right. Lake Mead. Oh, that's one of our favorites. Yes.
Yep. Lots at Lake Mead.
Options. Zion, another favorite.
Mm-hmm. Bridges National Monument? I've never heard of that.
Where's that? Where did you see that?
Right there.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Maybe Rainbow Bridge?
Austin, Texas. I don't know that there's a lot of boondocking there. Austin's a pretty big city. The hill country, there might be. That's a possibility. Big Bend boondocking is really complicated. Just be forewarned. It can be done, but it's extremely complicated.
It's a weird
and you have
process.
to get permits from the park, even to boondock in the park. And our eyes crossed when we were even just trying to figure out how to do it. And so we ended up not going. Yellowstone, Vegas, yeah. Lake Mead, around Valley of Fire, there's a bunch of stuff out there.
Sedona.
Sedona, yep.
Good memories.
So why don't you jump back to the actual, the live event and then see, because for some reason I can't see the questions. They never loaded.
Okay. How do you determine whether you are trespassing or not?
Oh. Trespassing signs are...
There's usually signs.
Although sometimes they're not. You remember in, where were we? Mammoth, California? Near Mammoth Mountain?
Mammoth Lakes?
Yeah, Mammoth Lakes.
Or whatever.
We were on this great spot. It was on BLM land, but somebody came by and they're like, there was like a gate kind of at the back of the spot, and they kind of yelled at us because it was like entrance to some Native American land, and
But we weren't on that.
No, we were on the BLM, but they were still yelling at us like we were.
Well, they just needed to make sure they had access to that road that went by us.
It was weird though. I didn't understand. I was like, well, there's no signs. She's like, well, we keep putting them up and they get shot down. And I'm like, I don't. Not like I did it on purpose.
At the map, like it showed we were on BLM land. So.
Yeah, and somebody else had problems in that area too, didn't they? Some locals are very, very protective of like spots that they go to on a regular basis, and may not necessarily like you there. But yeah, if you're on BLM land, it's usually marked pretty well, and you can usually even look on your map, like on your mobile device, and you can usually see the divide. There's like the national land is usually in green on the map.
Not always though. Not
always, but yeah, it's a good way to kind of test. And for the most part, even on BLM land, there's going to be places that are marked as no camping. So just pay attention to the signage all over the place, and also keep in mind there's a 14-day limit on BLM land, and they'll usually have a big sign up there when you pull in, and it'll kind of give you the rules for the area.
That's important too, because we've definitely been in places where people are set up and actually living there.
Yeah.
And then that's just gonna end up getting that land shut down. So be mindful of the rules.
Yeah.
Don't be a rule breaker.
Yeah. Try to.
Then you're gonna ruin it for everybody.
Yeah, we want to keep this stuff up, and we want to respect the land and the rules. So definitely do that. Any other ways you can determine whether you're trespassing?
Maps, just most. So all BLM land is open to boondocking? No,
not necessarily. And also, the thing to remember about a lot of the BLM land is that there are designated spots on that BLM land, and when you get out there, you'll be able to tell. There's usually a fire pit, and there's a definite area that has been sort of set aside. It looks like a little campsite.
So don't go make your own area.
Right. Yeah.
Definitely don't disturb any of the plants.
It's called dispersed camping sometimes, but basically that means that there's a small area in this huge amount of land that's been set aside for camping, and there could be 5 spots, or there could be 100 spots, but what you don't want to do is be backing up over native plant life, or moving boulders and rocks, or cutting down trees, trying to get into spots. Definitely don't do that. Yeah. But like I said, you'll see when you get there. There's usually other people already there, and you can see the areas that are, there's no plants usually. It's like a little road.
It's obvious.
It's obvious. Sometimes there's even rocks set up around the perimeter of these sites. Just so you know, you can go back in here, but please don't, drive back any further than this, because you're going to start wrecking everything.
Yeah. So we're going to get into these questions of how it's marked, and are there signs in the coming days, right?
I don't know that we covered that much in detail. There are not always signs, but I don't know. Usually there's a sign when you enter an area. It's not like there's a sign for every single spot, but when you enter an area, there's usually one of those sort of boards that you would see, at the beginning of a hiking trail or something like that, and it has some stuff posted on it. Sometimes there's things about wild animals. Usually there's something about a limit for how long you can stay there. And
that's another thing too. Not all places have a 14-day limit. Some are even in the Grand Teton area is like a 3-day limit.
But it depended on the season. It was the busy season.
Right.
We went there when it wasn't busy, and they didn't. It was a 14-day limit. But other than that, it was
signs.
Yeah, always read the signs. Yeah. And when we get in tomorrow into actually finding some of these spots, you're going to be doing reconnaissance and research on the spot before you get there, and so hopefully you'll be able to find out some of the stuff before you even get there.
Yeah,
that's the plan. You want to be prepared.
Yes. One more question: how much does weather and forecast affect where you choose to camp?
Yeah, quite a bit.
We really have to pay attention to the weather.
Yep. We travel full time. We follow the weather as best we can. We don't like to be super hot or super cold. So, yeah, we'll definitely check the weather for where we're going.
But rain. Where we are right now, we're in Southern California, and it's been raining for so long. And even just getting into our spot here, the ground was so soft.
We kept sinking. We couldn't get it level.
We needed a level, and everything kept sinking into
we get it level, and then we let the pressure off, and it would just sink down.
So it's another thing that you got to think of. If the rain's in the forecast, what is the ground that you're on going to do?
Right.
And make sure you're not in a flood zone. I mean, we came across that when we were in, was it Arches?
Moab, yeah.
Yeah, in the Moab area. You just have to be aware of where you are and if you're in a flood zone.
Yeah, certain areas, flash floods are actually really dangerous, especially if you're near some sort of canyon or a slot canyon. Or in the case of Moab, it just never rains there. And so when it does, even if it only rains a few inches,
it doesn't soak in the ground.
It doesn't soak in, and you just get mudslides, and it turns into soup, and it is really dangerous. And so I think we actually adjusted our plans. We got to Moab and we were going to boondock, and then we saw it was going to rain, and we did a little bit of research, and the last time there were problems, it was 3 inches of rain that caused tons of damage.
There was mudslides.
Yeah, and it was going to rain, and so we ended up staying at a park really high up in elevation. We didn't have any problems, but we went down, lower later, and there was mudslides everywhere. It was a mess down there. We could have easily gotten stuck in it. So yeah, you definitely need to pay attention to the area you're at, because 2 inches of rain doesn't sound like a big deal, but in certain areas it can be. Wind is also a big thing, especially out in the desert. And we've encountered a lot of really heavy winds, which for us, we're pretty aerodynamic with the Airstream, but we have to pay attention. If we have the awning out or the solar panels are tilted, that stuff can easily get ripped off or broken.
Or even now the ground deploy has tipped over once.
And we have some really solar panels we set out, and the wind can catch that and blow it over a lot easier.
Always check the weather.
Yeah, I mean, even we were just in Zion a couple of weeks ago and got 70+ mile an hour wind gusts, and it was crazy. So definitely keep an eye on that. We use Dark Sky for our weather app for the most part, and you can set up alerts in it so that it will notify you if the wind is going to be over a certain mile per hour, or we have a temperature thing so we know if it's going to freeze overnight. So there's a few ways you can do that.
Temperature thing.
A temperature notification.
All right, here's another question. Do you always unhitch to scout out a spot, or do you risk it?
We really should unhitch every time.
Okay, the only reason
but we don't always.
That we don't is when we have read reviews and we know for sure that there's a place that we can turn around.
Right. Or you can satellite view it too, and sometimes that helps.
Right.
But I will say, usually what we'll do is we'll pull into an area, and if we see a spot pretty close to the beginning or somewhere to drop the trailer, we'll go ahead and drop it in kind of the rough area that we think we might end up. And then we will continue, with the truck to scout further down the road. And depending on what we find, we usually drop the kids off at the spot to hold it.
If we find a really good one.
Because let me tell you, there have been times, so many times, when we drop the trailer, we go find this awesome spot, and we're like, sweet, and we go back to the truck, and we bring the trailer back, and somebody's in it. It's happened so many times. So we always try to leave either somebody or some big thing in the spot so that somebody knows, people know that we've got it taken. But especially if you're new to boondocking, I would highly recommend you just go ahead and drop that trailer when you get right to the entrance of that boondocking area, and go scout it out, because there could be really bad dips, there could be rocks, there could be all kinds of stuff that you just can't. You might get stuck somewhere. We don't want to advocate for that. So definitely go and do some scouting.
Are you guys having trouble hearing us? Someone is saying they're wondering if we're having buffering issues.
I don't know.
It's fine.
All
on
we
our
see
ends.
is our video, so I don't know.
Hopefully it's fine for you guys. Another question.
What sources do you use to find BLM land? You will be learning that tomorrow. Yeah, basically we have a guide that we've already created, and a lot of you probably have that. That's probably how you found out about this course today. But if you haven't downloaded it already, we'll be sending you a link to download that in the email tomorrow.
Okay, here's another question.
Oh, yeah.
How much water do you travel with in the trailer tanks?
0. Well, mostly 0.
Usually 0.
Here's the reason, though.
We did the same thing. That was weird.
We're in a really old renovated Airstream. It's a 1972, and when we renovated it, we built the interior stuff a little heavy, and so we're kind of right at our max for the frame, and so we don't want to put any more stress on the frame than possible, so we travel without water in the tanks. There's a few other reasons you may want to do that. The first is that it adds a lot of weight, and if you're going over a lot of crazy terrain, that means you got water sloshing. What?
You're using your hands.
I talk with my hands. What's wrong with that? But that will, it's putting stress on the trailer, especially if you stop and start. It's going to kind of make that whole trailer go back and forth a little bit. If you're going slow, it may not be a big deal. But if you're going a long distance, like say you got a 4-hour drive and you're going through the mountains,
it's just a lot of extra stress.
I would just not put that extra stress on your tow vehicle and your actual trailer if possible. Now, if you got a trailer like some big Class A thing that's got 100-gallon tanks and it's got the engine power to pull it around and it's not a big deal, go for it. But we usually travel with as little water as possible in the tank. And then what we'll do is we'll go get the water and bring it back to the trailer with some different methods that we have that we carried in the bed of the truck, basically.
Chris said you could drone it if you're looking for boondocking spots instead of dropping the trailer.
That's a good idea.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Although we have got yelled at by a guy that was camping near us when we were trying to get a drone shot.
Yeah.
And he thought we were
he thought I got too close to his van. He could hear the drone, and so he got angry. Yeah, potentially you could do that. But again, some of the BLM land that we're on is really close to national parks. And so it's definitely not legal in a national park. So you'd have to be really careful about that.
That's all the questions.
That's all the questions?
Yeah.
What?
So I think
you guys have more questions. Come on. I know you
they might have more questions tomorrow.
Oh, they'll probably have lots more questions.
Should we talk about what we're talking about tomorrow? Should we talk a little bit about what we're talking about tomorrow?
Talk about what we're talking about tomorrow.
Should we talk a little bit about what's tomorrow, or just wait for the email?
No, I think we save it for tomorrow.
Okay, here's one more question.
Oh.
When you leave the trailer for an extended time, say to go for groceries, do you secure your trailer to keep someone from driving off with your trailer?
We have a few minimal things in place. We don't have a hitch lock because they're really expensive, and I don't know that they would really stop anybody. And we do have, so when we got this old trailer, it came with these weird wheel chocks that go in between the two tires and tighten up and keep the trailer from moving back and forth. And it's got a place where you can put a padlock in it. So we usually do that on both wheels.
I mean, if somebody really wanted to,
on both sides.
Chop them off.
It's the thing. Somebody could come in with a big set of bolt cutters or a grinder and just,
Even with a hitch lock, I mean, if they really want it bad enough, they can get it.
We've even heard of people coming in, and if there's a hitch lock, they'll just take the chains and just hook the chains and just drag it out, which makes me sick thinking about it. But
that's why we have insurance.
That's why we have insurance. And honestly, if someone was going to steal your trailer, most likely that's going to happen in the city somewhere and not out boondocking, because like we've said several times, we feel way safer boondocking than we do camping in cities. We've had way more trouble in cities than we have had out off-grid. So people are way nicer out there. And there's hardly anybody out there anyway.
And
so
you're usually out there for the same reasons.
Yeah, criminals are lazy. You're probably going to be 20, 30 minutes outside of town anyway. And the last thing a criminal is going to do, unless it's like a organized Airstream crime ring, there could be like an organized group of people that like scout Airstreams and steal them. I don't know.
That's random.
Yeah, but they're not going to drive 20 minutes out of town, case the joint, like watch you and see when you leave. Like they're just too lazy. They're not going to. I doubt that's going to happen.
Here's another one. What's the most challenging part of boondocking for someone trying it the first time?
Just trying it.
Just do it the first time. I would say...
Let's tell them about our first time.
Which one?
Our first one by ourselves.
Where was that?
Lake Mead.
Oh. Okay. Here's a couple rules that we try to go by. Don't ever come into a boondocking spot when it's dark and you've never been there before.
Never. Just don't even.
Because then you don't know if it had rained a few days before and if it's really muddy because you can't see 10 feet in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
We may have gotten stuck in Lake Mead with our fifth wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And had our friends drive 2 hours to come pull us out.
Mm-hmm.
Because AAA wasn't going to come out there. Nobody would have come out there.
No.
So, luckily, our friends had just bought a truck with a winch, so they were able to pull us out. But, seriously, we try to never pull into a place when it's dark. What are the other rules?
That's the main
scouting.
one.
Just
yes.
scouting.
Make sure you scout and don't pull in after dark.
But say they got there and they're set up, and what are their challenges? I say water and trash are your challenges. Trying to find out where you're going to dump your trash and fill up water.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
Those are typically your challenges. And power, obviously, unless you have a generator or solar and you have that figured out.
But I think more than anything, like I said, it's like you can research it to death. And it's good to research it to get an idea of what's going on. But you're going to learn way more by just trying it.
Yeah.
And even though our first, time was sort of a disaster, the first time we went out, we learned that number one, you don't want to try to boondock with a 2-wheel drive truck and a fifth wheel without off-road tires.
Yeah.
That was a really good learning experience for us. You never know what the road conditions are going to be like, and so you need to have that extra assurance that you're going to be able to get out of there quickly if there's a problem. And second, that it's amazing how this community is, that someone would drive that we never met in person before.
We had never met them in person. We talked to them on Instagram, but they drove 2 hours to come help us. So it was just...
But from that experience, like even though it sucked really bad,
we learned a lot.
We learned a lot. And actually, once we got pulled out of the mud and we got over, to a more secure spot, it was gorgeous. And we really enjoyed it. And we really had a great time there. And I think that we kind of got the worst out of the way.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, we did that. Now let's go figure this out.
Okay. Here's another question.
Yeah.
Do you scout out your hiking areas first or find your spot and then find your hiking areas?
That's a good question. I think if we're going to an area, especially like a national park area, like we know there's going to be a lot of stuff around. I don't know. I don't think we look specifically for hikes before we go anywhere.
No, just about everywhere we go, we'll even drive 30, 40 minutes for a good hike. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So we're going to find hiking.
You'd be amazed how much hiking there is. We use an app called All Trails that'll just find hikes that are close by. And sometimes we'll, search a few other things. But, we usually pick an area that we want to go to and then try to find adventures based on that, I think.
Solar versus generator or both?
We much prefer solar, but you always need a generator as a backup. We've got our generator running right now because it's been raining for the last 4 days here in California.
And cloudy.
And there's just, it doesn't matter how many solar panels you have. If there's no sun, you're not going to get power. So
Sure.
always have a generator backup. But if you can, boondocking is much more enjoyable without the sound of a generator running 24/7.
Yeah. Remember the first time we boondocked with our friends, and we were like the only ones with two generators running. They were like, "You can camp over there."
Yeah. There's something about the peace and the quiet and the serenity that is just really fantastic. But at the same time, we like to tell people, don't let that stop you from trying it. If all you have is a generator and you want to get out there and see what it's like, take the generator with you and just, be aware of who's around you. Think about quiet hours, like what you would like to have as quiet hours, and try not to run it all night, and just be conscientious of other people, if I can talk right. Yes.
What generator do we have? We have an old Honda, what was it, EU 2000i or something like that?
Yeah, the 2,000-watt Honda generator. The Airstream doesn't really need 30 amps. We can charge up the batteries on just the one generator, so we travel light.
What's the longest you've been out without having to restock water, food, fuel?
Well, here's the thing. When we boondock, we don't generally stay in the middle of nowhere for weeks at a time. Like, we're going into town, on a pretty regular basis to get some water or to...
We get bored.
Yeah. I mean,
we don't want to
we
stay
work,
in one spot
from inside the trailer, and the kids do school in here. And like, sometimes you just got to go somewhere. Sometimes you need ice. Sometimes you got trash you got to get rid of. So it's not like we necessarily go out in the middle of the desert and don't leave, for weeks at a time. It's just that we don't move the trailer for weeks at a time, if that makes sense.
But let's say this, restocking water. I think the
Sure.
longest we've gone without adding to our 40 gallons with just 40 gallons was 5 days.
Yeah.
For 6 people. That's including our drinking water. So that week we did not invite anybody over to our trailer because there were very many showers going on that week.
We might have been a little bit stinky. Yeah.
But another good thing about boondocking is, like, we always have these wipes. They're called Epic wipes. And so that's another way you can save water if you don't want to get a full-on shower. So
yeah. And a lot of times what we'll do too is, so we have a 30-gallon water bladder and then 2 5-gallon water jugs. And so when we get to a spot, we'll go find some water, we'll fill up everything, we'll bring it back, we'll transfer it into the fresh tank. And then usually as we go into town, every other day, we will take those 2 10-gallons and we'll just fill them up, when we're in town. And then that way we kind of keep our tank topped off, and we're not having to go do huge water runs, every 3 or 4 days. But that helps us kind of simplify things a little bit.
And yes, we do filter our water. That was another question. We use a Berkey water filter. A lot of these, like the Honda generator and the Berkey, if you follow us on Instagram, in our highlights section, there's 2 sections like favorites and off-grid gear, and those are included there, so you can look for more information on that.
Yeah, and we've got some blog posts about that stuff too that we can share.
Yeah. How do you manage your toilet issues?
We have a composting toilet.
How do you manage your toilet? Jonathan does.
Yeah, so we have a composting toilet, which, as with anything, has pros and cons. The good thing is that we don't have a black tank, and so it allows us to
use less water.
Well, it uses way less water, and it allows us to actually stay out on these boondocking spots for weeks at a time because we don't have to go dump our black tank somewhere. Because obviously you cannot dump black water on the ground anywhere. It has to go down a sewer connection. So
gray water sometimes can be dumped on the ground.
Right. Gray water can be sprinkled or let out slowly depending on where you're at.
That's the key.
But by not having a black tank, it does simplify where we can stay and how long we can stay places. Now, it does mean that we have, so basically a composting toilet diverts both things into separate containers. And so as a family of 6, we fill up the liquids container about once a day. and that has to be, again, sprinkled or dumped on the ground somewhere. If we're in a park, I'll take it to the bathhouse and, we'll dump it down the toilet. The solids...
Or we just use the bathroom at the camp.
We try to do that too.
Campground,
yeah.
We just use the bathroom.
The solids have to be changed for us about every 7 to 10 days.
It's 10 to 12.
10 to 12 days, whatever. And so you mix it up with coconut coir, and so it creates a composting process. And then once that process is started, when you need to dump it, you just put it into a bag, and you can just a compostable bag, and you can throw it in a dumpster or a trash can anywhere.
Now that is not fully composted. Yes, we know.
Yeah, don't put it on your garden.
No, but over time, in that compostable bag,
it will
compost
itself, yeah.
And it's fine. It's legal.
So it can go into the landfill, so you don't have to worry about that. It's when the solids and the liquids combine that they create sewage. When they're kept separate, they're actually not toxic on their own. So, not to say they're not gross, but they're not toxic.
Here's one. How did you get an Airstream without a black tank? For those of you who don't know, this is a 1972 Airstream that we fully renovated, completely gutted.
And
it didn't even have a black tank.
Well, no, it did.
Oh, it only
came with a black tank. It didn't even have a gray tank. Like, you were just supposed to run all of your sink and shower water straight out onto the ground.
Yeah.
1970s.
So when we renovated, we converted the black tank to a gray tank and added a gray tank. So we have 40 gallons of gray storage.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, you can always convert your black tank to a gray tank if you want. Because especially if you're pulling out your original toilet, you can plumb. You could put a composting toilet in, and you could plumb the pee bucket into that black tank and just turn it into a gray tank if you wanted to.
We should have plumbed our diverter into our gray tank. That if you're installing a composting toilet, divert it into a gray tank.
See, is it doing stuff down here too?
Here, no, I've got it.
Does it do it at the top or the bottom?
Top. I just skipped one question because we were talking about the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Do you have a propane fridge? No, we do not.
Nope.
We have a marine fridge that runs on 12 volt.
Yeah, we found that the fridges that switch between electric and propane are super finicky and janky, and if they break, you're going to have to deal with an RV tech, and that's going to be a nightmare. So we decided to go with an RV fridge that has like a standard residential compressor in it. It's very energy efficient, but it's not so complicated that it's got like logic boards and all the other stuff that those other RV fridges have. And so we like it a lot better because it's really solid and it works all the time. The only thing is it does have a pretty big power draw, and so we have a really large lithium battery bank that helps us offset that. So I think it pulls about 3 to 4 amps when it's running, and it runs a lot. So it pulls down about 20% of our battery overnight. So we just have to have lots of solar and batteries to kind of deal with it.
I love it though.
Yeah.
It's nice to not have to worry about. That's like a major cause in most RVs of fire is the fridge catching on fire.
And if you live in the trailer like us and your fridge goes out, you're kind of screwed because all your food's going to go bad. And that happened to us multiple times in the fifth wheel. Even though it was a brand new fifth wheel, a brand new fridge, they're
not reliable.
No.
So and they're expensive to have fixed.
Yeah.
Ellen would like to know my dishwashing secrets when boondocking.
Ooh.
Okay, my secret is
I'm going to grab a drink.
Okay. We have a wash bin that is in the sink. So like a really small tub that I wash dishes in. And I always use an eco-friendly soap so that I don't use a lot of soap so that we can just dump it on the ground. Depending on where we are, of course. Because not everywhere you can do that. But that is my secret. Oh, and I just barely turn the faucet on. Like you just use way less water.
So basically you wash as many dishes as you can in that white bucket, and then when it gets dirty, rather than dumping it down your sink and into your gray tank, you just kind of go splash it.
No, you water a plant.
Well, I was going to say, you splash it on a plant.
Okay.
Yeah, you water the plants. And
we're helping the plant.
Yeah. and then just bring it back and fill it back up to keep going with the rest of your dishes. And that's the best way. As long as you're not when you wash it, don't crank your handle open and use way more water than you need to. And having a small container will kind of help you figure that out, because you'll realize really fast that if you are doing that, you're going to fill that bucket up after you've only washed like 4 dishes. So you kind of get the hang of it. Yeah.
Also, another way I save water is I have a big, like a gallon jug that we had bought like spring water in at one point. But I use it to, like when I'm starting to wash dishes and I want to have warm water, I put all that water into a jug that's coming out that's cold before it turns warm.
Right.
That goes into a jug.
We need to tell them why that is.
But you can say.
So we have a tankless water heater, which means that it is very, very energy efficient, but it also means that it only creates hot water when you need it. Yeah, so we don't have 6 gallons or 10 gallons or whatever of hot water on demand. It takes about a gallon, half a gallon?
It's half a gallon.
It takes about half a gallon worth of water running through before, it creates the hot water instantly, but it takes a minute to get all the way from the back up to the front, or to where, because it's got to run through all the pipes in the trailer to get there. So what we do is we fill up that gallon jug and then we pour it in the Berkey to filter it. Or
it goes back in the fresh tank.
Or if the Berkey's full, we just put it back in the fresh tank. So
that's water saving tip number 3.
Yeah, and not having a composting toilet, or having a composting toilet, helps a lot, because it's crazy how much water a flushable toilet uses.
And you have to have a lot of water in that black tank before you even use it. So
right, you don't want to poop here.
Okay, so I'm not going to talk about that anymore. Where do you find places to dump when boondocking?
So that would be some of the research you'll be doing tomorrow, because part of your research for finding a spot is also looking for things like fresh water, trash, and you may come across information about where you can dump. We found that...
We will cover that tomorrow, right?
Yeah, we'll cover some...
Yeah,
well,
some of it tomorrow.
But I can tell you real quick that depending on where you are in the country, like if you're out west, a lot of gas stations will have a dump station that you can pay for, or a lot of times just go to a campground, like a paid campground, paying $5 or $10. You can fill up your water there while you do it, and go ahead and dump your tanks
and trash
and your trash, and then you're good. And then you go out into wherever. Just find somewhere close by to kind of stock up before you go. You have to call ahead, obviously, and see if they'll let you do it.
And yes, Peter, our fridge is 12 volt.
Yep.
Yes, it's a marine fridge. It's a Nova Cool, and that's on our website as well. Berkey. It's Berkey. It's a Berkey water filter, and at the end of this, I'll put links to all the things that we're talking about so that you can look them up and research them yourself. Yeah. But yeah, we even had the Berkey in our house before we started traveling.
It's a big cylinder that you put your water in the top, and then it uses gravity to filter down through the charcoal and some fluoride filters, and it comes out clean on the bottom, basically. So it's pretty awesome.
Do you ever use the outside shower?
Well, we have 2 outside showers.
We do have 2 outside showers.
We use the small outside shower, every once in a while, clean off our feet or do some outside projects. Yeah, not a lot though.
No, we don't use it a lot. But when we renovated, we made our kitchen sink to where it can swivel 180 and go out our kitchen window. And no, we haven't used that because our kids are like, don't do that. You're not getting a shower outside. So we threaten them with it.
Yeah.
If you're not good, you're going to get a shower outside. Yeah. But I think that's about it.
Okay. Well, we still have 15 minutes. Are there any other questions?
I don't like that we can't see people. Like, I feel like I should interact.
That would be a lot of bandwidth.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll go ahead and link up the Berkey and a few other things that we mentioned here, just so you guys can see the links and check them out if you want.
And before we jump off here, one other thing we'll be talking about more later in the week is that at the end of this, so what we're doing this week is sort of to teach you all about how to plan a boondocking trip, right? But there's so many other, like some of the stuff we just talked about on this call, like about how do you deal with water and your toilet and solar and all that stuff. We're putting together like a really in-depth sort of group course.
6 weeks.
A 6-week group course. There's only going to be like 10 people max in it, and so each week we're going to have a group call, and we're going to walk you through a bunch of really in-depth information about each of these topics. And then we'll be doing like one-on-one calls with you to help you figure out like your next best step for boondocking or camping off grid, or really even just whatever you want to talk about. But we're going to be opening that up at the end of this week. It is paid, but we think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to last 6 weeks again. And we'll be answering some of these questions here in the video, but if you want it presented in like a video format where you can actually ask us those questions in person on video about the stuff as we're talking about it, and then have detailed information written out with tons of links and stuff like that.
Lots of information.
So much information. Yeah. Keep an eye out for that if you're interested. We'll let you know more about that later in the week, but we just wanted to give you a heads up before we get there. So
there's a couple more questions. Do you want to mess with them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Always.
Well, here's a fun one. Have you ever had problems with rodents?
Yes.
We have.
It all depends on your trailer and how well it's built and how well it's sealed up underneath. We haven't had any problems underneath.
Wait.
What?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. I'm anxious to answer it.
Well, you go ahead then.
Well, one time when we were in California boondocking at a friend's house, they were right by like a huge fruit, like it was fruit orchards all around this house. And so we had ants that time. Ants crawled up was it the water? I think it was the water hose. Crawled up the water hose and somehow got into the bathroom. Right, yeah. And in the bathroom, lots of ants.
Yeah.
It got really dark. Oh, there we go. So ants are like my biggest thing. I just hate little bugs. And they're hard to get rid of. But for that, what we use is a product called diatomaceous earth, and it works awesome. We just sprinkle it on the ants, and it will eventually kill them. It kind of like slits their exoskeleton. And we sprinkle that. If we see that there's like ants in the area that we're camping, we'll sprinkle it on anything that touches the ground. So like our stabilizers, we'll sprinkle some on there, and our jack. And then that was the only time we've had ants.
But those aren't rodents. She asked about rodents.
Tell
her about the rodents.
We were in northern Idaho, and we were camping in the middle of the woods, and trees all over, like, surrounding us, like, over the Airstream.
Yep.
And at night, we were going to bed, and all of a sudden we hear, like, a thud on the roof. And it was so loud, I thought that it was like a raccoon or something. It
sounded huge.
It sounded like a raccoon or like a bobcat or something.
It was like scurrying across the roof.
And we just kept hearing it, and we were like, what the heck is that? And then we hear something in our cabinet. And I was like, oh my gosh. So Jonathan opens up the cabinet, and there's this little mouse just staring at him. Oh my gosh, it was so creepy. And then there was three mice.
Well, it was weird. We didn't realize there was more than one because we opened the top cabinet.
And there's air, and I shut it.
And then we heard a noise down in the trash can down below, and we pulled that out. And it was down there, too. And we're like, how did it get down there so fast? But it turns out they came in. So we have a refrigerator vent that they climb, and we have wires, all of our solar wires and our internet wires. They go down through that, so we didn't have to drill new holes in the roof.
And that goes through the cabinets in our kitchen.
It goes right behind the fridge. There's like a little chase that they could just walk right down, climb down the wires. I'm sure it was very easy for them. And so they got in. And so we had a couple of nights where we had a war against the mice, which was not fun. But we never had anything get in underneath. Like, we've heard horror stories, of people having all sorts of stuff come up underneath, but that's never been our problem.
Well, that's another good thing about how we renovated the Airstream. So we we could see everything.
Right.
So we sealed everything really well.
Yeah.
Kids' biggest challenge?
Kids' biggest challenge?
What's the kids' biggest challenge?
Oh, gosh. I don't know.
They don't really complain about much.
They have an easy life. Let me tell you what.
They don't really complain about
If they had any idea how good they have.
I think it's just harder. I think when we meet up with friends, it's hard for them to leave. I think that is hard.
Yeah, we meet a lot of we meet a lot of new people, but yeah, when you've spent a couple of days with them, it's hard to leave for sure.
Especially Ada, she has a hard time leaving her friends.
We have one social one. The rest of them are
everybody else,
and they're like, but yeah, she has trouble. Husband tried to log in, but the system said you were full.
Add him later.
Yeah, if he requested access, we'll get him added. Although yeah, I'll talk to you later.
Internet connectivity.
TinyShinyHome.com/internet.
Huge article.
Yep.
We get asked that all the time, but all the information's on that blog post. What are security issues to be aware of? That's another thing that we're going to talk about in our detailed course.
Yeah.
Honestly, we have not had any security issues ever, but we do discuss options and things to be aware of in the course. Yeah,
that's kind of a broad question. I'm trying to think if there's anything I could say quickly. Yeah, I think the biggest thing to remember is that you are out kind of off the beaten path. And so if that worries you, having internet is really important so that you could call or know exactly where to go, like to an emergency room or something like that if there were an issue. It's important to have the connectivity for that. If you're worried about being able to protect yourself, there are, plenty of portable weapons and things like that you could look into. You can lock things up. But like we said, we haven't really had any issues with people boondocking. Most of them are like us. They're really chill and they're respectful, and they are going to stay to themselves for the most part because we're all kind of out here to enjoy the solitude and the beauty, and we're not looking to cause problems. That being said, there are definitely places we pulled up into that felt super sketchy. There's places that had 14-day limits and were definitely not being policed. And so you could tell people were living there, and they were living there because they had to. And stuff was pretty run down. But even then, most of those people, again, they're just trying to stay to themselves. They don't want to cause any trouble because if somebody gets called out, then they're going to get kicked out, and then they don't have anywhere to live. So, we'll dig into a lot of that security stuff in the deeper course. But for the most part, we haven't had to worry about hardly anything. What resources do you use to find land?
Isn't that tomorrow?
That's tomorrow. Make sure you're on the email list, and you will get the information. I
think that's it.
Yeah, I think.
Wrap it up.
I think we're going to wrap it up. Everybody, thank you so much for showing up for the first day and for asking awesome questions. And again, you're going to get another email tomorrow. You're going to have a little bit more work to do, but hopefully we explain it well enough and you can get a jump on it. So there will be another pinned post at the top of the page where you can post a comment with your homework. And so we will discuss it. We'll look at your homework and we'll see if you did a good job. We'll grade it. We're going to be handing out grades. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, we'll be doing that tomorrow. So I guess that's it. We'll see you guys later. Until tomorrow at 1 o'clock Pacific time.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.